I stared at Ron in disbelief, my heart pounding as the words he had just uttered slowly sank in. "You're leaving me? For Leanne?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. Ron nodded, his expression devoid of any remorse. "I'm sorry, Vivian, but I've fallen out of love with you. Leanne understands me in a way you never could." I clenched my fists, trying to control the surge of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "And what about Ethan and Ada? Are you just going to abandon them too?" Ron's face hardened. "Ethan is coming with me. With Leanne's connections in the music industry, he has a real shot at becoming a professional musician. As for Ada," he shook his head dismissively, "with her learning disabilities, she doesn't have much of a future." I felt my blood boil at his callous words. "How dare you write off our daughter like that? She's just as talented and deserving as Ethan." "Come on, Vivian. Be realistic." Ron scoffed. "Ethan has always been the more promising one. Ada will only hold him back." I stepped closer, my voice low and seething. "You're a coward, Ron, running away from your family because you can't handle the responsibility. Well, I'm not going to let you ruin our children's lives." Ron rolled his eyes. "Save the melodramatics. I've made my decision, and Ethan is coming with me. You can keep Ada if you want, but don't expect any support from me." Before I could respond, Ethan entered the room, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Dad? What's going on?" Ron turned to him, his expression softening. "Son, I've decided to leave your mother, but you're coming with me and Leanne. We're going to help you pursue your music career." Ethan looked at me, his eyes pleading for guidance. I wanted nothing more than to protect him from this nightmare, but I knew I couldn't stop Ron from taking him. "Ethan, it's your choice," I said, fighting back tears, "but know that no matter what, I'll always love you and support you." Ethan hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, Dad, I'll go with you." I felt my heart shatter as I watched my son walk away with the man who had just torn our family apart. But even as the pain threatened to consume me, a newfound determination took root. I would fight for Ada and myself, proving to Ron that we were more than he ever gave us credit for. The sound of the front door slamming shut echoed through the house like a gunshot, signaling the end of my life as I knew it. Ron and Ethan were gone, leaving behind a deafening silence that threatened to swallow me whole. Ada emerged from her room, her eyes wide with confusion. "Mom, where did Dad and Ethan go?" I forced a smile, determined not to let her see the depths of my anguish. "Your father has decided to leave us, sweetheart, but everything is going to be okay." Ada's lower lip trembled, and I cursed Ron for putting her through this trauma. "But why would he leave? Did we do something wrong?" Pulling her into a tight embrace, I smoothed her hair. "No, baby, this has nothing to do with you or me. Your father just made a selfish choice." As the words left my lips, a wave of rage washed over me. How dare Ron treat us like disposable baggage, abandoning his own flesh and blood without a second thought? And to dismiss Ada's potential so callously, it was unforgivable. "Mom?" Ada's voice snapped me out of my fury. "Are you okay?" I took a deep breath, pushing down the anger that threatened to consume me. "I'm fine, honey, just a little overwhelmed. But I promise you, we're going to get through this together." Over the next few days, the reality of Ron's betrayal sank in. He had not only left me for his younger mistress, but had also taken our son, the one person I thought he truly cared for. The sting of his parting words about Ada still burned like acid in my veins. As I sorted through the wreckage of our life, I stumbled upon a stack of files detailing Ron's business dealings. Flipping through the pages, a growing sense of unease crept over me. Something wasn't right. There were discrepancies, inconsistencies that hinted at something far more sinister than a simple affair. A plan began to take shape in my mind, a burning desire for revenge fueling my every move. If Ron thought he could cast us aside like yesterday's garbage, he had another thing coming. I would expose his lies, his deceit, and make him pay for every ounce of pain he had inflicted upon us. With a newfound sense of purpose, I began gathering evidence, building a case against the man who had once sworn to love and cherish me. Ron might have thought he had won, but he had severely underestimated the lengths a mother would go to protect her children. As the days turned into weeks, I pored over the files, piecing together the puzzle of Ron's misdeeds. Each revelation stoked the fires of my fury, strengthening my resolve to bring him down. One evening, as Ada and I sat down for dinner, she looked up at me with those innocent eyes that had once been filled with such wonder. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. "Ada, I promise you, we are going to be more than okay. Your father may have given up on us, but I never will. We're going to show him just how strong we can be." And with those words, a silent vow was made, a vow to fight for our family, to reclaim what was rightfully ours, and to ensure that Ron's betrayal would not go unpunished. The papers were spread out before me, a damning trail of evidence that exposed Ron's web of lies and deceit. My hands trembled as I sifted through the documents, each page revealing a new layer of his betrayal. I had always known Ron was an ambitious man, driven by a relentless pursuit of success. But this was something else entirely. He had been cooking the books, embezzling funds, and deceiving his partners, all in the name of personal gain. As the full scope of his misdeeds came into focus, a cold determination settled over me. Ron might have thought he was untouchable, but he had made a grave mistake in underestimating me. With a deep breath, I began sorting through the files, meticulously organizing the evidence into a comprehensive case against him. Every canceled check, every doctored report, every suspicious transaction, it all painted a picture of a man consumed by greed and willing to sacrifice everything for his own selfish desires. Amidst the chaos of my research, Ada's voice drifted in from the living room, a gentle reminder of why I was doing this. "Mom, can you help me with my art project?" Setting the papers aside, I made my way to where she sat, her little hands covered in paint, and her eyes alight with excitement. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, sitting beside her and marveling at the vibrant colors splashed across the canvas. "This is beautiful, Ada. You have such a gift." She beamed up at me, her smile a beacon of hope in the darkness that had enveloped our lives. "Thanks, Mom. I want to be an artist when I grow up." In that moment, a realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. All this time, I had been so consumed by the desire to bring Ron to justice that I had nearly lost sight of what truly mattered, nurturing Ada's talents and helping her reach her full potential. A spark ignited within me, fueling a newfound determination. If Ron thought Ada was a lost cause, I would prove him wrong in the most spectacular way possible. The next morning, I withdrew a portion of my modest savings and made a call to the prestigious Riverside Arts Academy. "Hello. I'd like to inquire about enrolling my daughter in your program." The admissions counselor's voice crackled over the line. "Certainly, ma'am. Could you tell me a bit about your daughter's artistic background?" I glanced over at Ada, her face aglow with joy as she painted, and a surge of pride welled up within me. "My daughter is a true prodigy," I said, my voice unwavering. "She has a gift unlike anything I've ever seen, and I know your academy can help her reach her full potential." The counselor paused for a moment before responding. "Well, we'll need to review her portfolio and conduct an assessment, but if she's as talented as you say, I'm sure we can find a place for her here." As I hung up the phone, a sense of purpose coursed through my veins. This was just the beginning, the first step in our journey to not only seek justice, but to thrive in spite of Ron's betrayal. I turned to Ada, her eyes shining with innocent curiosity. "How would you like to attend a special school for artists?" Her face lit up like 1,000 suns, and in that moment, I knew we were on the path to something extraordinary. "Really, Mom? That would be amazing." Pulling her into a tight embrace, I silently vowed to give her every opportunity in the world, no matter what obstacles stood in our way. Ron might have given up on us, but we were just getting started. The smell of fresh paint and the sound of Ada's laughter filled the air as she worked on her latest masterpiece. It had been a month since she started at Riverside Arts Academy, and the transformation was nothing short of remarkable. "Mom, come look," she called out, waving me over with a paintbrush in hand. I set down the stack of files I had been poring over and made my way to her side, my heart swelling with pride at the vibrant canvas before us. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You're becoming quite the little artist." Ada beamed up at me, her eyes sparkling with a newfound confidence that had been all too rare in the past. "I love it here, Mom. Everyone is so nice, and they really believe in me." As I watched her dive back into her work, a familiar fire ignited within me. This, her happiness, her growth, her newfound sense of self, was the ultimate revenge against Ron's dismissive words and cruel actions. With a renewed sense of purpose, I returned to the files, determined to build an airtight case against the man who had nearly destroyed our family. Hour after hour, I pored over the documents, cross-referencing dates, tracking paper trails, and piecing together the intricate web of lies that Ron had spun. Each damning revelation only fueled my fury, stoking the flames of my desire for justice. Finally, after weeks of meticulous work, I had everything I needed. A comprehensive dossier detailing Ron's fraudulent business practices, embezzlement schemes, and illicit dealings. It was a bombshell that would not only bring him down, but would also expose the depths of his betrayal to the world. Armed with this ammunition, I made my way to the law offices of Greenfield & Associates, a prestigious firm known for their tenacity in high-profile cases. The receptionist eyed me warily as I approached. "Do you have an appointment?" I squared my shoulders, clutching the file to my chest. "No, but I need to speak with an attorney immediately. It's a matter of utmost urgency." She opened her mouth to protest, but something in my expression must have given her pause. With a curt nod, she picked up the phone and ushered me into the waiting area. Minutes ticked by like hours as I sat there, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the moment I had been working towards for weeks, the first step in reclaiming our lives and securing a future for Ada and myself. Finally, a sharply dressed man emerged from one of the offices, his gaze settling on me. "Mrs. Vivian, I'm Harvey Greenfield. What can I do for you?" I rose to my feet, mustering every ounce of strength and determination I possessed. "Mr. Greenfield, I have evidence that my soon-to-be ex-husband has been engaging in fraudulent business practices and embezzlement schemes. I want to bring him down and ensure that he faces the full consequences of his actions." Harvey's eyebrows shot up, but he quickly regained his composure. "That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Vivian. Do you have proof?" Without hesitation, I handed him the file, the weight of it all finally lifting from my shoulders. "Everything you need is in there. I want to bury him for what he's done to my family." Harvey flipped through the pages, his eyes widening with each damning revelation. After what felt like an eternity, he looked up at me, a newfound respect shining in his eyes. "Mrs. Vivian, with this evidence, we have a very strong case against your husband. If you're ready, we can proceed with legal action immediately." A sense of relief washed over me, tempered by a steely resolve. This was just the beginning, the first step in a long journey towards justice and redemption. "Let's do it," I said, my voice unwavering. "It's time to make him pay." The roar of applause filled the auditorium as Ada's name was announced, her face beaming with pride as she accepted the prestigious Young Artists Award. I watched from the audience, my heart swelling with a mixture of joy and vindication. As she made her way back to her seat, clutching the gleaming trophy, she caught my eye and mouthed a silent thank you. In that moment, all the struggles and sacrifices felt worth it, a testament to the power of belief and unwavering support. On the drive home, Ada couldn't stop gushing about the award ceremony, her words tumbling out in a torrent of excitement. "Did you see the look on Mrs. Jacobson's face when they called my name? She was so surprised." Ada giggled, her eyes sparkling with mischief. I couldn't help but chuckle at her infectious enthusiasm. "I saw it, honey. You really showed everyone what you're capable of." As we pulled into the driveway, a notification popped up on my phone. It was a news alert from a local business publication, and the headline made my heart skip a beat. "Scandal rocks Landry Enterprises, CEO facing fraud charges." Without a second thought, I clicked on the link, my hands trembling as I read the damning article. It detailed the evidence that had been brought forth, painting a picture of Ron's deceitful business practices and misappropriation of funds. A small part of me felt a twinge of satisfaction at his downfall, but it was quickly overshadowed by a sense of relief. The walls were closing in on him, and he was finally being held accountable for his actions. As I scrolled further down, a particular paragraph caught my eye, causing my blood to run cold. Sources close to the investigation have revealed that Landry's former business partner and alleged mistress, Leanne Wilkins, may also be implicated in the scandal. Leanne, the woman who had torn my family apart, the catalyst for Ron's betrayal. My grip tightened on the phone as a surge of anger coursed through my veins. "Mom, are you okay?" Ada's voice snapped me out of my rage-induced haze. Forcing a smile, I nodded. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just got some good news about your father's business." Ada's brow furrowed, her expression a mix of confusion and concern. "Is everything all right with Dad?" I took a deep breath, weighing my words carefully. "Your father made some bad choices, and he's facing the consequences. But you don't need to worry about that right now." Her eyes widened, but she didn't press further. Instead, she reached out and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "Well, whatever it is, I'm sure he'll figure it out. He always does." The innocence in her voice nearly broke my heart. If only she knew the full extent of Ron's betrayal, the depths of his deceit. But I couldn't bear to shatter her illusions, not yet. As we headed inside, my phone pinged again, this time with a notification from Ethan's social media account. Curiosity getting the better of me, I opened it, only to be greeted by a series of posts that made my stomach churn. There was Ethan, looking gaunt and exhausted, surrounded by a group of people I didn't recognize. The captions painted a picture of a life consumed by the relentless pursuit of fame and success, fueled by Leanne's ambitions and Ron's blind support. "Another grueling day in the studio," one post read. "Gotta keep pushing if I want to make it big." As I scrolled through the feed, a growing sense of unease crept over me. This wasn't the life I wanted for my son. A life of constant pressure and unrealistic expectations. In that moment, a newfound determination took root within me. Not only would I bring Ron to justice for his crimes, but I would also fight to protect Ethan from the toxic environment he had been thrust into. My family had already suffered enough at the hands of Ron's selfish choices. It was time to take a stand, to reclaim what was rightfully ours, and to forge a path forward on our own terms. With a steely resolve, I closed the app and turned to Ada, who was already hard at work on her next masterpiece. "Ada, how would you feel about having your brother come live with us again?" Her eyes lit up with joy, and in that moment I knew we were embarking on a new chapter, one defined not by Ron's betrayal, but by our unwavering strength and resilience as a family. The doorbell rang, its shrill echo cutting through the silence that had settled over the house. With a deep breath, I steeled myself for the confrontation that was to come. Swinging the door open, I came face to face with the man who had once been my husband, the man who had betrayed and abandoned us in pursuit of his own selfish desires. Ron stood before me, his eyes hollow and his shoulders slumped, a mere shadow of the confident, ambitious man he once was. Beside him, Ethan lingered, his gaze downcast and his posture defeated. "Vivian," Ron began, his voice little more than a rasp. "I know I have no right to ask this, but can we come in?" I studied them for a moment, taking in the broken shells of their former selves. Part of me wanted to slam the door in their faces, to deny them the solace they had so callously stripped from our family. But another part, the part that still clung to the shreds of compassion buried deep within, couldn't turn them away. "Make it quick," I said, stepping aside to allow them entry. As they shuffled into the living room, I couldn't help but notice the changes in Ethan. Gone was the vibrant, passionate young man I had raised. In his place stood a hollow, haunted version of himself, his spirit crushed by the weight of expectations and ambitions that were never truly his own. Ron cleared his throat, drawing my attention back to him. I don't even know where to begin," he stammered, his eyes flickering with a mixture of shame and regret. "How about the truth?" I snapped, my fury bubbling just beneath the surface. "The whole truth, for once in your miserable life." He flinched at my words, but to his credit, he didn't try to deflect or make excuses. "You're right. I owe you that much, at least." Taking a deep breath, he began to unravel the tangled web of lies and deception that had been his life for the past several months. "Leanne and we thought we could make it big in the music industry. She had connections, and with Ethan's talent, we were sure we could strike it rich." He shook his head, a rueful smile playing on his lips. "But we got in over our heads. The pressure, the demands, the constant hustle, it was too much." Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his fingers twitching at his sides. "Dad kept pushing me harder and harder," he chimed in, his voice barely above a whisper. "He said it was the only way to make it, but it just felt wrong." Ron's shoulders sagged, his gaze dropping to the floor. And then the money started running out. We had to take some shortcuts, bend a few rules to keep things afloat. My blood ran cold as the pieces fell into place. The fraud, the embezzlement, it had all been in service of their misguided dreams of fame and fortune. "So you decided to lie and steal," I hissed, my anger rising like a tidal wave. "You threw away your family, your integrity, all for a shot at the big time." Ron opened his mouth to respond, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. Instead, he simply nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. In that moment, I felt a surge of pity, not for Ron, but for the broken man before me. He had sacrificed everything in pursuit of his ambitions, only to come up empty-handed and alone. "Mom," Ethan spoke up, his voice quivering. "I'm so sorry. For everything. I never should have left with Dad, but I was just so desperate to make him proud." My heart ached at the pain etched across his face, and in that moment, all the anger and resentment seemed to melt away. Stepping forward, I pulled him into a fierce embrace, holding him close as if to shield him from the world that had tried so hard to break him. "It's okay, Ethan," I murmured, stroking his hair. "You're home now. That's all that matters." As he clung to me, his body shaking with silent sobs, I caught Ron's eye over his shoulder. For a brief moment, I saw a flicker of the man I had once loved, the man who had promised to cherish and protect our family. But just as quickly as it appeared, the moment passed, replaced by a cold, hard reality. Ron had made his choices, and now he would have to live with the consequences. "You can stay," I said, my voice steely and unwavering. "But not for me. For Ethan and Ada. They need their brother back." Ron nodded, his eyes glistening with a mixture of gratitude and resignation. As I held my son close, surrounded by the wreckage of our once happy family, I felt a newfound sense of determination take root. We had been through hell and back, but we had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more united than ever before. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but with Ethan by our side, I knew we could face any challenge that came our way. Ron's betrayal had nearly torn us apart, but in the end, it had only served to forge an unbreakable bond, a bond that would carry us through the darkest of times and into a brighter, more hopeful future. The air was thick with tension as Ron sat across from me, his eyes downcast and his shoulders slumped in defeat. Ethan and Ada lingered nearby, their faces etched with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Well?" I said, breaking the silence that had settled over the room. "Are you going to say something, or are you just going to sit there feeling sorry for yourself?" Ron flinched at the sharpness of my tone, but he didn't shrink away. Instead, he met my gaze head-on, his eyes filled with a wariness that seemed to age him a decade. "I don't know what to say, Vivian," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've made so many mistakes, hurt so many people. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know how sorry I am." I scoffed, folding my arms across my chest. "Sorry doesn't begin to cover it, Ron. Do you have any idea what you've put us through?" He nodded slowly, his gaze drifting towards Ethan and Ada. "I know, and I'll never be able to make it up to you, or to them." Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flickering between us. "Mom, maybe we should just give him a chance to explain himself." I opened my mouth to protest, but Ada beat me to it. "Yeah, Mom," she chimed in, her voice small but resolute. "Maybe we should hear him out." I studied them for a moment, taken aback by their willingness to listen to the man who had so thoroughly betrayed us all. But deep down, I knew they were right. If we were ever going to move forward, we needed to confront the past head-on. With a sigh, I turned back to Ron. "All right, let's hear it, but don't expect any sugarcoating from me." Ron nodded, his eyes glistening with a mixture of gratitude and remorse. "I know I've made a mess of things," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "When Leanne and I started working together, it was just business at first. But then, things changed. We started getting reckless, taking shortcuts to keep the money coming in." He paused, running a hand through his thinning hair. "And then there was Ethan. I saw so much potential in him, so much talent. I thought if I pushed hard enough, he could make it big in the music industry." Ethan tensed beside me, his jaw clenching. "But I took it too far," Ron continued, his gaze shifting to his son. "I put so much pressure on you, Ethan. I was so obsessed with seeing you succeed that I lost sight of what was really important." Ethan remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. And then there was Ada, Ron said, turning his attention to my daughter. I know what I said about you was unforgivable. I let my own biases and prejudices cloud my judgment, and for that, I am truly sorry. Ada shifted uncomfortably, but I could see the flicker of hurt in her eyes. I know I can't undo the damage I've caused, Ron said, his voice thick with emotion. But I want you all to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make things right. A heavy silence settled over the room, punctuated only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. I studied Ron, searching for any trace of insincerity or deception. But all I saw was a broken man, stripped bare of his arrogance and pride. Well, that's quite the speech, I said finally, my voice cutting through the stillness like a knife. But words mean nothing without actions, Ron. He nodded, his eyes shining with determination. I know, and I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to prove myself. I leaned forward, my gaze boring into him. Good, because you're going to face the consequences of your actions whether you like it or not. Ron swallowed hard, but he didn't back down. I understand. No, I don't think you do, I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. You're going to cooperate fully with the authorities. You're going to come clean about every single one of your shady business deals, every penny you embezzled, every lie you told. His face paled, but he didn't protest. And then, I continued, you're going to let Ethan and Ada live their lives on their terms, without any of your interference or pressure. I let the weight of my words hang in the air for a moment before delivering the final blow, because if you don't, I'll make sure you rot in prison for the rest of your miserable life. Ron's shoulders sagged, but he nodded, his resolve unwavering. I'll do it, whatever it takes. Ethan and Ada exchanged a glance, a flicker of hope dancing across their faces. They had been through hell and back, but in the end, they had emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. As I studied the broken remnants of my family, I felt a strange sense of closure wash over me. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but we were finally taking the first steps towards healing and redemption. Ron might have betrayed us in the worst possible way, but in the end, his actions had only served to forge an unbreakable bond between us, a bond that would carry us through the darkest of times and into a brighter, more hopeful future. The sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over the living room as Ethan and Ada sat together, lost in a world of their own creation. It had been months since Ron's departure, and the wounds of his betrayal were finally beginning to heal. Hey, Mom, come check this out, Ethan called, his voice filled with a lightness that had been absent for far too long. I set aside the book I had been reading and joined them on the couch, my heart swelling with pride at the sight before me. Ethan had his guitar in hand, strumming out a gentle melody, while Ada added splashes of vibrant color to a canvas, her brushstrokes flowing in perfect harmony with the music. It's beautiful, I murmured, watching as their individual talents intertwined, creating something truly special. Ethan flashed me a grin, his eyes sparkling with a newfound sense of joy. It's a collaboration, he explained. Ada's painting what the music inspires her to see. I marveled at the sight, struck by the contrast between this moment and the darkness that had once threatened to consume us. Gone were the shadows of Ron's influence, replaced by a radiant light that burned bright within each of them. As their impromptu performance came to a close, Ada set down her brush and leaned back, admiring her work. "What do you think, Mom?" she asked, her voice brimming with pride. I studied the canvas, awash in a kaleidoscope of colors and emotions. "It's breathtaking, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into a warm embrace. "You two are truly something special." In that moment, I was reminded of just how far we had come, of the struggles and sacrifices that had forged an unbreakable bond between us. Ron's betrayal had nearly torn us apart, but in the end, it had only served to strengthen our resolve and deepen our connection. As we basked in the warmth of each other's company, the shrill ring of the doorbell pierced the tranquil atmosphere. Ethan shot me a quizzical look, but I simply shrugged, rising to my feet to answer the door. When I opened it, I was greeted by the sight of a stern-faced man in a crisp suit, clutching a manila envelope in his hand. "Mrs. Vivian?" he asked, his voice clipped and professional. I nodded, my heart beginning to race. "Yes, that's me." He extended the envelope towards me. I have a legal summons for you. It seems your husband is finally facing the consequences of his actions." I accepted the envelope with trembling hands, my mind racing. After all this time, all the pain and heartache, Ron was finally being held accountable. "Thank you," I managed, forcing a polite smile. The man tipped his hat and turned on his heel, leaving me standing there with the weight of the summons in my hands. Ethan and Ada appeared at my side, their faces etched with concern. "Mom, what's going on?" Ethan asked, his brow furrowed. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "It's nothing to worry about," I assured them. "Just some legal matters regarding your father." Ada's eyes widened. "Is he going to prison?" I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to respond, but then I remembered the promise I had made to myself, the vow to always be honest with them, no matter how difficult the truth might be. "Yes, honey," I said, meeting her gaze head-on. "Your father made some very poor choices, and he's going to have to face the consequences." Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his fingers twitching at his sides. "I don't know how to feel about that," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. I reached out, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "It's okay to feel conflicted, Ethan. Your father, he's done some terrible things, but he's still your father." Ethan nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But you know," I continued, my voice taking on a lighter tone, "we don't have to dwell on that right now. We've got a whole future ahead of us, filled with endless possibilities." Ada perked up at that, with her eyes shining with excitement. "Like what, Mom?" I smiled, wrapping an arm around each of them. "Well, for starters, I was thinking we could look into getting your art into a gallery, Ada. And Ethan, maybe it's time you started sharing your music with the world." Their faces lit up like twin suns, their dreams and aspirations suddenly within reach. "Really?" Ada breathed, her voice tinged with awe. I nodded, my heart swelling with pride and determination. "Absolutely. It's time for us to start living our lives on our own terms, without anyone holding us back." In that moment, we were a family reborn, a phoenix rising from the ashes of Ron's betrayal, stronger and more resilient than ever before. The road ahead would be paved with challenges and obstacles, but we would face them head-on, united in our unwavering strength and resolve. As we stood there, basking in the warmth of our newfound freedom, I knew that our journey was just beginning. The shackles of the past had been broken, and a world of possibilities lay before us, waiting to be seized with both hands. It was a new chapter in our lives, one filled with hope, purpose, and the unwavering belief that no matter what life threw our way, we would always have each other to lean on.